We are to number 6 in our top 10 of 2024. And this is, in a lot of ways, the topic of the year outside of, I don't know, stuff like the election. But, I mean, from a tech standpoint, artificial intelligence really started to show itself in very practical, common ways in 2024. A lot of questions came up, especially for Christians. You know, you've got, I mean, you got the alarmists, is AI going to take over the world and destroy humanity? But you have the very practical questions like, should a pastor use AI to write a sermon? Fair question. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? How should we view this new form of technology? I mean, it's in our phones. It's in our TVs. You're using it right now wherever you're watching, a laptop, PC, phone, any of those. AI is probably not going away, but is that a good thing or a bad thing? Is it even the beast in Revelation? You're going to find out today. So we discussed artificial intelligence with apologist, writer, thinker, and cool guy, Abdu Murray. Enjoy this one.
Oh, it's great to be with you, Randy. Thanks for having me on, and it's always such a pleasure.
So here's the opening question, because we're just talking offline, through email and stuff, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And we got all these things we could talk about. I mean, and you're like, AI. I'm like, really? I'm like, cool. Why are you interested in AI?
Yeah, that's a great question. As he started a few years ago, I'm sort of a technophile, like the latest gadget. I need to have the latest gadget. I restrain myself because of financial concerns, and I want my wife just to like me. So I refrain from buying the latest and greatest of the gadgets, but I really want to. For whatever reason, I'm a big sci-fi fan. I've always been like that.
Okay.
What caught my attention, though, was a comment not made by AI, but made in reaction to AI. A couple of years ago, there was an art contest, and I dabble a little bit on my iPad with like digital art, just a way to pass the time while I'm flying and that kind of thing, and it leaves no mess because you don't have to clean any paints up. But there's a digital art contest. Well, it was an art contest that had a digital art category to it. And a guy won. His name was Jason Allen. He won first prize, and the image he created was quite beautiful. Now, when you do digital art, what you do is you take like a light pen, like this thing here, and you apply it to an iPad or a large screen, or there's like a trackpad, and you paint much like you paint on a canvas. It's just the digital thing helps you to not create a mess. Well, he won first prize, and his image was breathtakingly beautiful. Later, they learned that he didn't put a pen or a brush to anything. He literally typed in some prompts into a generative AI called Midjourney, and over a series of edits where he just typed things in, it created this image, and it was beautiful and breathtaking, and it won first prize. Well, you can naturally understand that the other contestants were pretty upset about it, and said there was no human element except for him writing some sentences. That doesn't qualify as art. And after some deliberation, the judges panel actually said no, because he had at least some modicum of creativity in writing the sentences that got it to produce that, we want to give him his first prize.
Wow.
What was fascinating to me was his comment back in response to all the criticism. You can see it in the New York Times. He had this statement. He says, "This isn't going to stop. It's over. Art is dead. AI won. Humans lost." And he did it boastfully. Like he's saying, look, you need to deal with this. You need to get over it. And I remember thinking to myself, as a dabbling artist, and someone who believes in the exceptionalism of human beings, not morally, but ontologically, in other words, in our nature, because we're made in God's image. We're not sophisticated chimps, nor are we just meat computers. What this guy was doing was bragging about the fact that this computer program was actually able to beat other artists, not at chess, not at Go, not at Stratego or tic-tac-toe, but at art, a quintessentially human thing. And what I thought was weird was his brag. Like, why are you bragging about human beings being made obsolete artistically by AI? Did you forget that you're not AI, that you're actually a human being? What a weird thing to brag about. And so I started delving into what AI does, how it does it. Is it really creative? Does it have any sense of wisdom? Can it think on its own? Can it mimic human beings? And for a number of reasons, one's apologetics, because oftentimes people think that the human mind is just the brain. The brain and the mind are the same thing, and that the brain is a physical thing, and therefore we're just physical. There's no soul. There's only the assimilation of a soul. But really, it's just neurons and neurotransmitters firing in reaction to external stimuli. And along comes AI. And we say, look, we don't need God to create a brain. We did one. We created something that computes faster than us. It can create art better than us. So what do we need God for? Which has two paradoxes to it. And this is ultimately why I'm fascinated by this. It's not just because I like technology stuff, but I'm fascinated by the cultural impact this will have. Because if the naturalists can use AI to argue we don't need God to create the human mind and conscience and morality, because we just created a machine that simulates it, then two things happen. We simultaneously, we engage in a paradox. We simultaneously reduce human beings to mere machines or animality. We also elevate human beings to godhood.
Yeah.
Because that's a Garden of Eden story. We're in a digital Garden of Eden. God created beings, us, in his image and likeness. He didn't create other gods. He created beings lower than God, Psalm 8. Because God, it literally is logically impossible for God to create another perfect being, because that perfect being would not need to be created. By perfection, you need nothing. And if you need to be created, well, then you're not perfect. Only God can be perfect. And so he can't go against himself. So he creates us, and we're lower than he is. But we come along and say, oh, well, you got limitations, God. We don't. We can create something in our image and likeness, but that's actually better than us. And so it's that Adam and Eve thing all over again. They ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil because they wanted to be God, not be with God. And so I think we're in an Adam and Eve moment. We're in a digital Garden of Eden where we have to ask ourselves, what are we going to do to this thing? And so that's why I'm fascinated by what it does to us, what we will do with it. I don't think the problem is in the silicon of the AI. I think it's in the soul of humanity. And we need to explore what this is all about.
I like that. I like that, and I agree with you. So let me ask you the question: was that winning digital art piece, was it art?
Yeah. So from my perspective, and there's been some debate about that. So never one to ask easy questions, are you, Randy?
Nope.
No, and I'm glad actually. No, I've wrestled with it a bit, and I think it has an artistic quality to it in the fact that he wanted to create a certain kind of image, and use the sentences and the prompts to get there. But do I think it's art? I don't. And here's a number of reasons why. One is because it took none of the mind, the non-material and the material humanity to create it. Art is an expression of human will and human sentiment and human emotion. And so if I have a picture in my head and I set up a scene to mimic that picture so that I can paint it, or I even have something in my head and I don't even need a scene that exists to paint it, like a sci-fi thing. I can't paint black holes with a reference because I don't have a black hole right in front of me, kind of a thing. There's something about that immaterial mind that translates to the material hand, that translates to the material canvas or even the digital world. And this seems to lack that, at least to an appreciable degree. Second thing is what AI does when it creates this image. It doesn't create something entirely new. It's new in one sense. It's a conglomeration of things. But generative AI, and there's an important distinction to be made between artificial intelligence, which has become almost a meaningless term. I was talking with a Christian who was an AI expert over at MIT the other day. And she said, AI, artificial intelligence, is such a bandied about term. It's almost meaningless now because it's got a very specific definition.
Mm-hmm.
What we think of as AI, whether it's Chat GPT or the Google version, which is called Bard or whatever it is, Midjourney as well, this image creator, what it does, if you say, write an essay for me on George Washington, it doesn't write an essay for you thinking, okay, I'm going to do some research, give my own opinions, and think about George Washington's impact on the American Revolution. No, what it does is it goes out into the world and it takes all the publicly available information that's out there, whether it's images or writings of various people, millions and millions of people. It cobbles it together. It scrapes little
Right.
tiny bits of all that,
Right.
cobbles it together and creates something. So it doesn't actually generate anything. In the sense that it's actually novel, it borrows from the database it's been fed, which is you and me. So
Mm-hmm.
it's basically just reflecting you and me, or you and I as a whole, as a collective. And art can do that, but it does it through the individual expression. And AI doesn't do that because AI just cobbles together what it thinks you want to hear or see.
Yeah, and that's when people get a little uptight about AI. Here's where I am now, and this is evolving because we're still watching this, we're still figuring this out. But kind of where I am right now is, look, it's artificial, and some of the stuff that it's spitting out, your Chat GPT and things like that, is kind of advanced level plagiarism.
Mhm,
I mean,
mhm.
and that may be useful. It may get you a job as the president of Harvard, but it's not. It's like, you're still gonna get garbage in, garbage out. I mean,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
hope I think culture will wise up to it pretty quick to go, okay, well, I mean,
Yeah.
you just have to have some discernment. So I mean, is it naive?
No, I think there's two things we have to think about there. And I think you're right. We have to come to terms of understanding what it is we're dealing with here. So here's a classic example. A good friend of mine who's a pastor, a brilliant guy, by the way. He was driving with his daughter somewhere, and his daughter asked him a question about some form of history. And he's a history guy. He knows his stuff. And she asked him the question, and he said, "Well, honey, it's this," while they were driving. She says, "You know what? I'm going to look at Google. I'm going to look it up in Google."
Yeah.
What she basically told him was, thanks, I kind of trust you, but I'm going to verify that with the thing I do trust, which is a machine. I
Mm.
trust the machine to tell me. Now, Google doesn't know anything. Google just, again, cobbles together what's out there in the universe,
With
in the
bias.
metaverse, and puts it back.
Yeah.
So I think, one, we have an over trust of machines because we think there's no bias and we think that people aren't really behind these things.
Mm.
They're behind these things.
Yes.
So garbage in, garbage out. There's a bias to all this. The second thing, though, is and there's a wonderful author. I don't think he's a Christian as far as I can tell, but he's a work psychologist, and his name is Tomás Chamorro Premusic. So it's quite a mouthful there. But he does a lot of psychology on work and how people use tools and implement tools in their daily lives. And he does a lot on AI. And he has this really cool quote. It's not about a good thing. It's a great quote about bad stuff. And he says, "We appear to have surrendered our humanity to the algorithms. Like a digital version of Stockholm Syndrome, our very identity and existence have been collapsed to the categories machines use to understand and predict our behavior." Now, why he says that is this, is that we're using AI all the time. If you're on YouTube for any appreciable amount of time and you look up 2 or 3 videos and you're a first-time user of YouTube, you've never used it in your life, and you've clicked on 3 things and you've lingered on them for a certain amount of time and you've watched certain parts of it, the algorithm is picking up your patterns and your behaviors.
Yeah.
And it says, oh, she tends to like videos with people who wear orange sweaters. And if they're about cats, they linger for a lot longer. So what happens is that on the side, the column is, you might like this. And it starts to populate. And the more you watch YouTube, the better it gets at it. But here's the interesting feedback. And Netflix is the same way. Here's the interesting feedback loop. You like certain videos. It says, we want to keep you on our website for as long as humanly possible because we make money that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to send you more videos that are like that, slight variations, but more videos that are like that.
Right.
And that's where we get the term, like the YouTube black hole. We started watching one thing, and before we know it, we're watching 50 things.
Yep.
And all this. It's guiding you down that black hole. So here's what Music is saying. When you click, why, yes, YouTube, I would like that. Or why, yes, Netflix, I would love to watch that. What you're telling Netflix is a reinforcement. You were right. I want to watch that. And so it sends you more just like it. And so instead of using your actual motivation, your actual free will, what you're doing is you're taking the controller or the mouse and you're going click,
Yeah.
click,
Yeah.
like a robot. And
Yeah.
so we become more machine-like. It's not that the machines become more human. That's not the problem. The problem is the humans become more machine-like because we're relying on these things a lot more than we ought to.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
And it explains why every time I go on YouTube, they want me to watch more John Christ comedy bites, and I do.
Yeah.
Because I do
There you
enjoy
go.
them. But it
Mhm.
does. It's the whole Social Dilemma, which is a wonderful film. It narrows you. But on the trust thing, I want to go back to that because this is a big deal. In the early days of the internet, you did believe what you found, right?
Mhm.
And then the joke it kind of becomes, yeah, I read it on the internet. Ha, ha, ha. Yeah, so it
Yeah,
must be true, right? Because we
right.
kind of all got it. Like, okay, there's tons of garbage out there. You can find anything you want to look for out there. Any whack-a-mole theory, any
Hmm.
or wackadoodle theory, any it's all out there. It's just
Yeah,
a barren wasteland.
yeah, yeah.
With AI, I have a friend of mine here who's like you. He loves the tech.
Hmm.
Because I'm on the air, there's plenty of my voice out there.
Hmm.
And so he put together this fake book and did a radio promo for this fake book by me, where I was boasting about this ridiculous book in over the top ways. Hilarious, right? I mean, he did it for some other people around here with various things. And
Yeah.
we're all laughing, right? Because the first time I played that book promo for my wife, she goes, "Why are you saying that? Like, you
Hmm.
buffoon," right? Because
Hmm.
I would be to say that. But it fooled my wife. It sounded so much like me that she thought it was me.
Yeah.
Well, funny when it's, ha ha, we know this is a joke. But we are to the point where audio's there and the video is there at a high level with the deep fake kind of stuff. Obviously, the
Yeah.
pictures are there. How close are we to not being able to believe anything we see or hear?
Yeah, and that's such a fascinating question because I'm actually in the middle of a project um, based on a called reality collapse, and it's based on
Mm.
the idea, and that phrase was actually made known to me by Tristan Harris and Aza Raskin, who are AI researchers, and deep fakes and these kind of things help to cause a reality collapse, and we're already in the middle of that, by the way. This,
Yeah.
AI is a booster rocket for it.
Yeah.
I'll give you a quick anecdote. Someone was telling me a story about a woman whose daughter came home from school, about 8 years old. She came home from school and she was crying. And the reason she was crying is that the teacher gave her a talking to. Now, she didn't like scold her. What happened was is that the little girl had been playing with a boy, and her whole short life so far, she had been playing with this one boy, and I'll call him Billy. But Billy is now Bailey, and Bailey is no longer a boy. Bailey's a girl. What ended up happening with the girl was she kept on calling him Billy, and the teacher took her aside and says, "Honey, you can't call her Billy anymore. Billy is Bailey. Billy is a girl. You keep saying he, and it's a she." And the little girl's like, "But no, I know Billy. I know, no, and all that." And so the girl came home crying, not because she was yelled at. She wasn't put in her place. That's not what happened. The teacher was nice about it. The girl came home crying because she said in 8-year-old speak, she said, "I can't trust my own eyes."
Yeah.
And that causes an anxiety in young people whose developing idea of object permanence is at a critical stage, and yet you're going to challenge it now with shifting culture issues or shifting definitions of what it means to be male or female.
Right.
Couple that now with deep fakes,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to have, I mean, right now, you can go on this device right here. I can go on to Instagram and chat right now with a very real looking Tom Hanks, Kim Kardashian, basketball
Really?
players, and they'll give me like fashion advice, and it looks like them. It sounds like them. Filters are that way too. We're
Oh,
not too far off from where we can't really trust what we see anymore. And the question is going to be, what will this do to us, and what will be manipulable? Tristan Harris and Aza Ruskin were talking about deep fakes when it comes to audio and the way ne'er-do-wells can actually use this.
yeah.
One of them was you get a phone call from your teenage son,
Yeah.
and he's telling you, I'm in a situation. I need, I can't remember my social security number. I need to do this to register for classes.
Yeah.
And you give it to him.
Yeah.
You didn't give it to your son.
Yeah.
You gave it to a deepfake.
Yep.
Because all it takes now, there's certain programs, it takes 3 seconds of sampling your voice before it can actually
Yeah.
change and make it. So the question now is that how do you know you're talking to the real person? Is you have to call that person back, say, "I'll call you back." And then you call their actual cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you do it. Or you do a FaceTime or something.
Yeah.
But maybe that'll get hacked as well. Who knows? I'm not trying to scare everybody. What I'm saying is that we have to start being AI is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. It's just going to get stronger and more integrated into everything we do. And for some applications, that's fantastic.
Right.
The ability to diagnose people with ASD, autism spectrum disorder, and to be able to treat it through AI, there's going to be amazingly wonderful things that come from this. Amazing.
Yep.
But there come dangers. And I think the danger is not, again, in the silicon. It's in the soul. It's us. It's not what it will do to us. It's that what will we let it do to ourselves.
Yeah. I think you're exactly right. I mean, we're using it right now. We shot some things overseas in the mission field, brought it back. The audio was really rough, and the same guy on our team ran it through an AI program. It comes out sounding great. You're like, oh, so I mean, there's going to be a lot of good, and I think people need to know that. I think they also need to know, how do you combat the negative? And I think to your point, by the way, which that's already happening, except, well, I don't know about the Social Security thing, but hey, I'm in jail. I need money to get out right now. I'll explain later. Just send this to this whatever account, you know. That's going on. That's happening. And so we need to be wise, obviously, would be one thing. I don't know. I think the answer overall is a healthy skepticism and godly discernment. I mean, is that enough? You know,
I think well, let me add one additional thing to it, because it's how do we get godly discernment? I think people are making, jokes about, well, I read it on the internet, ha ha ha, so it must be true. But I got to tell you, people say that, but I don't think they always mean I don't trust it. I was at a conference recently on Christianity and public life, and one of the hosts actually said, I asked ChatGPT, what is Christianity's relationship with the coming emergence of AI? And he went on to talk about what it said. And, there's a weird trust factor that goes on here, especially in people younger than 20. Not because they're naive, because they've grown up around technology. They don't remember a time when technology wasn't everywhere. So they trust it because it's ubiquitous. We don't necessarily, because we remember the times when, the phone got a bunch of stuff wrong, or the GPSs used to be so bad that it got you to the wrong destination.
Right.
They don't know a time like that. So we have to, so that discernment has to come in with, I think, a healthy biblical worldview. And that worldview has to be based on, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be created in God's image? And no matter what the machines get you to think is the easy way, I think if we teach our young people that, yes, there are efficiencies we need that we can benefit from AI, there is a benefit from doing things the hard way sometimes. There's a learning process. There's a socialization that happens. And so if we get them to enjoy the non-AI world, I think they'll responsibly use the AI world in conjunction with the two. And that's the real goal. How do you do both? And that goes back to that discernment you were talking about.
Well, and that tends to be the case with technology in general. You look back through the last 100 years and see how we've had initially a lot of problems. Some, like when the internet came online, I was working in the early days of the internet, and it was like 50% porn, and so we were doing internet filtering for schools and libraries and homes. Well, now, I mean, there's far better good stuff than bad stuff, I would say, just because the volume comes online. But anytime technology, we get excited, we jump into it, and then we get burned by it, like you say. And I think, that dependency you talked about earlier on, that tendency to go, okay, Dad, I'm going to check it with Google. That process of weaning off of that level of trust in technology, ultimately a good thing. So I don't know. I guess, because you're in the spectrum, you get those who are just like, way too much trust, and then you get those that are like, oh, it's the mark of the beast, or whatever.
Yeah.
Somewhere in between is the truth. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I think this is exactly where we get wisdom from the Bible. Is we need to recognize that AI has the potential to make us think less of ourselves, but it also has the potential to make us think more of ourselves. And the Bible in Psalm 8 has the exact remedy for it. What is mankind that you are mindful? O Lord, or the Son of Man, that you care for him. You made him a little lower than the heavenly beings. You crowned him with honor and all these things. So um, the Bible has this wonderfully balanced remedy for that. And I think that if we develop a biblical worldview about the use of equipment and technology, and the Bible's actually got instances of these kind of things. As you know, any of the Bible says some trust in chariots and bows and archery and all this kind of stuff, but we trust in the Lord. Where do you put your trust ultimately? And I think that we have to have healthy fasts from technology as well. Look, what we need is more Christians with a strong Christian ethic and a background in the tech world. That's what we need. We need them developing this stuff, not with just the can we do it, but the should we do it. Um, and I think that's going to help guide us, because back to the whole prurient interests thing, right now, what you're going to have is a surge in AI intimacy, where you have these fake. You can do it right now. You can go on the App Store right now and get a fake girlfriend right now.
Oh yeah, it's big in Japan. I think is where they like literally date for years with avatars.
And
it's weird.
So what you end up having is with the availability of this kind of thing, in isolation in rooms where you're just talking to a screen all day, you're going to have less dating. You're going to have less interaction. You're going to have less marriage. You're going to have less understanding of other people. You're going to have these simulacra of AI, and we won't know how to deal with each other anymore. So that sense of community, church is a great embodiment of that. Church is a wonderful embodiment of what it means to come together. Now we're using AI technologies and other technologies to have virtual church because of, COVID started it didn't start it, but it ramped it up, right? So we feel like we went to church because we saw a sermon online, and I'm not against that. I've done it, especially when I can't go or I can't make it because I'm either traveling or something's come up or something's happened. But there's another thing altogether about the gathering together of the saints. We need to keep the human element in and keep each other in check. That's what we really need. And if we lose that, if we cede it to the machines, then we'll look just like them.
Oh boy, I got all sorts of sci-fi movies going through my head right now. I do think though that your point about the foundation is really, really critical, because I mean, you can build a 20-story building, but if it doesn't have a foundation, that sucker's coming down and it's bringing lots of people with it. But if you have a solid foundation, that 20-story building is good, And I really think that's the difference. And I think we're going to witness cases of that. There's probably some out there that I just don't know about, but if not, we'll see them soon. And so anybody out there watching, you watch this whole AI thing, you're going to see some good things that benefit people. And I think, I'm talking to someone right now. I don't know how much I should say. Let's just say that he is working on an AI solution that will enable the gospel in some really amazing ways, and getting it to people, getting it to it in their language and their dialect. There's a lot of really cool things right on the cusp here, and you're going to see those. But then you're going to see that person who got duped by the phone call, or you're going to see a politician where instead of just talking about a video they have with a prostitute, they actually show a video, not like literally show it, but they have a video, but is it real? You're just not going to know. So that foundation is the only thing that's going to save us.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And we get lessons from this in the scriptures, even at the Revelation, is that someone will say, there he is, and there he is. But if you know the real thing, you won't have to believe what other people say. You'll know Christ when you see him. Well, because of intimacy. That's how you know. Yeah. Luke chapter 24, Cleopas and the other disciple are walking on the road to Emmaus, and they don't really see who Jesus is until he does something. He breaks that bread the way he's always done it. And suddenly they're like, oh my goodness, that's him. Yeah. Because they had that intimacy of familiarity with who Jesus was, and they saw him over and over again. And so you can get fooled by a computer-generated voice because you're already getting digitized versions of people's voices on these machines anyway. So I call, and my wife's not hearing my actual voice. He's hearing the interpretation of my voice through the digitization. But she knows how I talk. She knows what I would say. Yeah. She knows what I would ask about, and because she knows me. And if we divorce ourselves from that foundation of intimacy with each other because of our intimacy with God, then we're going to lose something. But we don't have to. It's easy to get to gather together. It's easy to do that stuff and really get that discerning capability because it's built into us.
Yeah. My parents got one of those phone calls from my nephew saying, Papa, I'm in trouble. I need money. And he said he was in a local jail, but my dad knew, no, he's out of town. I know where he's at because there's relationship there. So,
yeah. Isn't that something?
Isn't that wild?
Wow. Yeah, that's wild. That is crazy.
And then I was like, Dad, don't believe anything else, because what if he wasn't out of town? You wouldn't have known. So
yeah.
We had that conversation too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Abdu, this is great. I'll show people your website. This is embracethetruth.org. And you said you're working on some AI stuff. What are you working on?
Yeah, so I got a couple presentations, one coming up at the Colson Center. We'll be doing a webinar on artificial intelligence and the image of God and that kind of thing. But I'm really working on a pitch for a new book.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's what I was
where we look at AI, the post-truth culture, and gender identity issues and all that stuff and how it's coming together.
Well, what do you think? Leave your comments below. If you disagree, just be nice about it. And, we'll see. We'll see what 2025 holds when it comes to AI. All right. Next week, the top 5 of the year. These have been good. I mean, there's so many good ones. There's so many wonderful guests out there. I love being able to do this, and I appreciate you being here. By the way, if this is your first exposure and you haven't liked or followed or subscribed, just hit that depending on where you're at, and hit that share if you see something interesting to you, because that's how you get these in the top 10. People hitting share and letting other people know about the different topics that we hit here on Life Today Live. So come back, please, next week for the top 5 of 2024.